build a React meta framework from scratch. Turns out that's something that's not that easy to do, and I can't do it. Someone on the call can, but not me. I probably could if I worked really hard on it for a very long time, learn a lot about achieving something like that. But right now, not my skill set, and I am unashamed of that. Also, knowing the full depth of the build ecosystem, basically, like most developers, the days that I dread the most are having to get into Vite, get into Webpack, get into anything that you're configuring something and switch things until it starts working. And then maybe after 2 weeks of throwing your hands in the air and saying that you're really frustrated, start digging around the actual chunks that are being created by the thing that you're building and seeing if you could dig in there and then go through 30 Stack Overflows. If this experience sounds familiar, well, that is because that is largely why I'm making the switch in the first place. But before we get to that, I'm going to show you what I built with Remix, but this is actually the TanStack Start version. So I have been spending the past couple of weeks trying to convert over my Remix app to TanStack Start. Show of hands, who knows what Remix is? Yes, we know people know what Remix is. Who knows what TanStack Start is? Cool. Who knows? Just maybe I should communicate this to the Zoom people. We got like 90% on everything so far. Who knows what TanStack? Everyone probably has heard of TanStack Query. That's like the really popular one. No? So TanStack Query, if you don't know, it's just a way for managing your queries. It turns out that when you're learning React in the beginning, and you go and you write a use effect, maybe make an array state of to-dos, and then you update that inside of the use effect. It turns out that's probably not the right way to do it if it's an application that you actually care about. TanStack Query is like it's probably the most popular. I don't actually know the numbers, but I think it's the most popular way of doing that kind of stuff these days, and you could do all sorts of fancy stuff there. Anyways, so now that I got an idea of who the audience is, TanStack Start is very, very similar to Remix. It's a React meta framework that uses data loader patterns. It does not have actions in the same capacity that Remix does, but the data loading patterns are extremely similar, and we'll talk about the pros and cons of each. Anyways, went ahead and ported this app over. You're going to notice some wonkiness. Like, for example, when I switch links, it does like do a flashy re-render thing. I think that there's just something I have to fix because there is a lot of code in this app. It's not quite as simple as starting a new TanStack app from scratch and getting all that working. So lots of code ported over. Actually, the process, though, I will say, has been surprisingly pleasant. Anyways, this software is called Remenu. Remenu is a platform where restaurant owners can log in and they can effectively update their menus. And then let's say like a WordPress developer or something like that makes a website for a restaurant. Well, that restaurant can now just log into the app and update their menu without having to talk to a WordPress developer. So like, for example, let's just look at some of these menus because I'm actually super proud of the rendering algorithm here. You could see all these different menu styles are the same algorithm. This one is the one that we're using to test our algorithm and make sure that it's rendering the things correctly. But yeah, all that is there. And then just to do a quick little demo, I was going to go ahead and build something from scratch. So we're going to go ahead and there's actually a restaurant right down the street from here called Osaka Ramen, and they're really good. And they have a really like simple menu. So it works really well for a demonstration like this. I'm going to go ahead and basically, I'm just going to look at, why can I not find, I feel like there is a thing here that I cannot see because it's on Zoom. So I just have to minimize that window real quick, open up this, and now I can actually see what I need to see. I'm going to go ahead and go in here, build the menu, and I'm going to dump in this guy. Oh, that is the wrong thing. That's a code snippet. I had them pulled up, and then I lost it. This is literally just a screenshot of the menu is all that this is. So I'm just going to drag that in, build a menu with a photo. And while I'm doing that, I'm actually going to open up a new tab and just show you how you would actually go and publish a menu. And the only reason why I'm really showing you all of this at the end of the day and why it matters for the sake of this conversation, other than me getting a job, is that yes, I've built a real app that is not just the happy path to do app where everything works and is fine and dandy until it doesn't. I've built a real app. This is something that I've spent 2 years on, and I've ran into the problems that you really run into when you're really building an app. So just to show you what the process of like dumping this in a website would be, You literally just, oh, actually, I realized I have to publish this first. Oh, wait, no, I did publish it. Yay, we're good. Okay, so you could basically just go into HTML block, paste the iframe, it resizes itself, all that stuff. And now that this is just an iframe, that means that the restaurant owner can update it independently. And also just to show you that little build thing worked. Hopefully we got, because it is an LLM call that it's doing. We do have a menu built out here. I could go through and style it. One of the really hard challenges of building this thing that really has nothing to do with TanStack was property overriding. I'm gonna take a look at the chats real quick. Nothing new. Okay, cool, sweet. So let's go ahead and get back to that slideshow. So that was what I built. And now let's ask myself, why change frameworks? Well, it turns out that that story I was talking about 5 minutes ago about how painful of an experience dumping you winding up in Vite world and looking at node module chunks and all that stuff can be was actually me upgrading Remix the last time, which was in fact a pain in the corgi butt. Remix is also kind of deprecated now, sort of, kind of, but not really. They say it's not, but it kind of is, in the sense that if you want to upgrade Remix, you're making a React router app. I haven't actually looked at what that entails as far as like how that offloading process would be. But if you've ever seen the meme where it's like a guy walking with his girlfriend and he's looking back at the girl that he really likes, that's what TanStack Router has been to me anyways. And since this is a project with not a lot of people, I can really just kind of say YOLO and do what I want. And my heart said, convert this to TanStack Start. So that's what I did, and I have been enjoying the process. Some reflections. I don't want to completely just dog on Remix and say Remix was like evil or horrible. There was actually a lot of really great stuff that I at least was introduced to through Remix. A lot of these things actually have existed before Remix, is my understanding, but a lot of my experience learning it was through Remix. One of them is just like having a full stack TypeScript app. Doesn't matter what the framework is, whether it's Next.js, whether it's Remix, whether it's TanStack Start, you're going to get this benefit of sharing the types in the back end and the front end. And also you're going to get like the deployment benefits of just like shipping to one place. And it's just easier to deploy and easier to test and all that stuff. So there's just a lot of simplicity that you get from having a full stack TypeScript app. If I have anybody here that hasn't tried it, make that the next thing you try. If you're here at a React conference, it doesn't matter which one, although hopefully I can convince you by the end of this talk to do TanStack Start, but do something full stack TypeScript. You could do it with Next.js TanStack. You could even do it with one of the weirder frameworks, Dino Fresh or whatever. Anything, it's gonna change the way you look at code, and it's really nice. Also, another really good thing that Remix did well is they have a data loading pattern called loaders. Loaders is effectively, you could think of as a function, an asynchronous function, or it can be asynchronous, that runs kind of on the back end, but depends on the meta framework that you're in. But the idea is that it runs before the route loads. So let's say I have a route for posts. I could make a loader for posts where I grab the data for posts, and then I could somehow reference that data. We're going to get into all that. Actions are kind of like the opposite. Loaders get data, actions set data in Remix. And Remix has a whole API for doing stuff like optimistic updates with them as well. Yeah, another big thing about Remix, and actually this is going to be one that I'm going to throw a big on that as something I didn't really love so much, was the HTML vibes. So Remix has a big philosophy. It's a big Kool-Aid that they drank that that you should, making an app should feel like it did, I don't know how many years ago, but back when you were just kind of doing HTML with actions and stuff like that. And also they've bought into this idea of having a no JavaScript sort of framework. So one of the cool things about Remix is, yes, you can actually do a lot of interactive things without actually JavaScript loading to the front end. I just don't care that much about that. And it really doesn't matter that much for the application that I'm building, to be quite frank. I'm going to load JavaScript if I want the features that I have. And it's once you do one thing that needs JavaScript, it kind of makes the whole no HTML thing not really make that much sense anymore, at least in my experience. I did think that the community was really great. One person that I think was really good for the Remix ecosystem is Kent C. Dodds. That guy is a really good just React educator in general. Seems like a kind human and did a really good job being very thorough with documentation. He did a really good job setting up like complete boilerplates that you could start from that had anything from Prisma files with users and passwords and also like GitHub Actions. And that was really cool. And it was really good for me where I was like starting this project like 2.5 years into my development career. And, getting to learn stuff like how does CI/CD work is crazy to be learning that early on. So very thankful for that. Also, it's not Next.js. Well, I'll talk about that. I'll defend that in a bit. I bet there's someone here but that's okay. So then we're going to talk why TanStack, why switch to TanStack. Well, you'll see it's basically everything's the same except for the HTML vibes. All the stuff is really good. The community is clearly really good, given that there is currently a meetup with 5 people here, and Tanner Lindsley is on the call. So that's got to speak something about the community. That's pretty amazing to me. The documentation, I would say, is pretty good. And the other thing that I really, really like about TanStack as a whole is, I'm just going to actually open it up. If you go to their like documentation, I've actually oftentimes found this to be more valuable than just parsing through the docs. They have all these examples of different routers setups, of different start setups. So like, let's say you want to go and do something like auth, just click on one of these. It's in StackBlitz, which took me some getting used to, but once you get used to it, it's really nice because you can just go and start like literally poking through code. And I think that that's really valuable because a lot of times you're like, how do I do this in this framework? And you just, it's always better to, I feel like it's always better to see code. I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, but I feel like that makes it a lot easier to figure out what's going on. So that is something I was a big fan of. Anyways, also I realized like I should close some of these tabs. We're gonna close some tabs. Was this the right one? Cool. Great. So I did want to, I roasted Next.js a little. Do we have any Next.js fans here? Oh man. Oh man. Okay. So I got a few. I'm going to talk about like the trade-offs just real quickly of like what I think to be like, I'm going to lump TanStack and Remix together here to sort of compare those because I will say using TanStack feels very aligned with the Remix strategy for data loading. And we'll talk about this in a second. So yes, here's what I wrote. I need to click OK so that way things go away on my screen. Okay, so Next.js, one thing I think it does probably better than the other frameworks is it makes I'm going to say, I wrote server client boundary, but really I probably should have wrote server component, client component boundary, very clear with use server and use client. In other words, when you're using a Next.js app, it's very clear knowing what thing is a server component and what's a client component, because that's kind of what the entire framework data loading pattern is like built around. Does anybody agree? Maybe like a thumbs up. I don't use Next.js that often. The thing that I think Next.js obfuscates is what data loads where, in a way. What do I mean by that? Anytime you have server components, it kind of fundamentally tracks, or at least in Next.js, it kind of fundamentally tracks to the route in Next.js in the sense that a route has a server component, and then every server component rendered inside of that is a server component. So even though it's not explicitly told, those server components do correspond with a route at some level. I mean, technically, you can fuzz that line a little bit, but I think for the sake of making this argument, this will make sense. And that makes sense. So when I'm looking at, like, let's say this is like a little app. This whole thing is the posts page. This whole right side of the page is the post/post ID page, and this would be the post/post ID/note/node ID, or something like that. When you think about where you draw the line of where is this data loaded from, it could come from, like, let's say I'm talking about this note. This note could be loaded here. It could be loaded here. It could be loaded here. And the only way to really find that out is to dig. And there is some level of like, I guess like, I'm sure you could come up with a fine design pattern in Next.js that's easy to follow. But one of the nice things about Remix and TanStack Router is if you're using the loading pattern, you know exactly where to look. In other words, I know that these posts almost definitely, if I'm using this loader pattern, have to come from the posts route. And then that would be where I look for my data. If I'm using post ID, I know that corresponds with a specific route, so on and so forth. The other thing I really want to call out about Next.js, and I'm wondering if maybe I can get some, okay, I'll concede to that here. We'll find out. But one of the things about Next.js is the server components are great until you need to do client side stuff, and then they can't be server components anymore. And that kind of throws a wrench in your data loading pattern. Like, I mean, I'm seeing some yes nods for those on the internet, on the interwebs. Yeah. So the really cool thing about both Remix and TanStack Router is they don't do that, not to the same extent, less so with TanStack Router than Remix, and why is probably not something I'm qualified to answer, but someone on this call is definitely qualified to answer. But the general idea is that TanStack Router, more so than Remix, is really prioritized as a client-side first library. So although you can do the SSR stuff, that escape hatch to client is easier than the other frameworks. That's one of the big things that I really like about it. Just to continue on this a little bit, I did a little slide here. I'm kind of going to skip over it, but if you've ever seen anything about, just because there's a lot to do, if you've ever seen anything about like data waterfall and how that becomes a problem, it becomes a problem in Next.js because as you render components, you have to wait for this thing to load potentially before the next thing loads, and you can kind of hyper optimize that with loaders. I'm not going to get too into it, but there's a really good actually Theo talk if you follow that guy, Theo GG. Anyways, he has a really good talk, I think, and he's actually reviewing someone else's thing, but I just saw it on his channel. But he's got a really good talk about sort of this trade-off between the performance gains you get out of a data loading pattern and the co-location that you get in something like Next.js. And it's sort of like a trade-off between developer experience and performance optimization. And this is a good code example of why loaders were bad. In other words, when I look at dogs here, this is, just imagine it's a dogs list component. I have dogs equals await get dogs, and then I map over those dogs. I know exactly where those dogs come from because everything is co-located right there. Boom, great, love it. In Remix, you're doing something like this. This is totally a problem I ran into, and the solution to the problem sucks just as much as the problem itself, okay? So with Remix, I have a loader. I am getting the dogs in the loader, then I can grab that data by calling use loader data. Also, if anybody's brain is exploding because this is bad, this is bad tabulation, I only did it so it fit in a thin vertical slice. I promise you, this is not how I do it in my real code. I just use prettier. But anyways, so if you're looking at this, I'm grabbing the dogs here, and then I'm passing the dogs in. And then now in my dogs component, it's a prop, and then I'm iterating over it. And this is kind of the core of how you do things in Remix. And I'm going to challenge an opinion here for a second. The common opinion is that co-locating fetching your data and your actual like mapping of that data is good because you can immediately see like where the data comes from and why it's there. I'm going to actually make a challenge that the really good reason on why it's there is actually because it removes coupling between the route and the component that you have that's rendering that thing. What do I mean by this? When I'm looking in this example and I'm looking at this dogs component lives in a specific place. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense anymore. This dogs component has to be fed dogs or it's not valid. And that DX makes it frustrating. And what like I wound up doing on my app is basically creating my own provider, which when you think about it, it's a little bit silly because Remix already has a provider. Remix has a provider for the router that already gives me the data. It just sucks to work with so much that sometimes it makes sense to kind of make your own provider and then import it. And it just feels like a bad solution. But now let's go ahead and look at how TanStack does it. So this is actually not a correct TanStack loader, but it fit on the page better than what a correct TanStack loader would look like. We're going to get to that in a bit. But with a TanStack loader, it's effectively the same idea where I await the data and then I can call use loader data and get it. The big difference is inside of here, I can do something magical. I can do from /dogs. And I want to make it clear, you're going to see this, and it's much better to see it than for me to tell it to you. But basically, if you go here and I do from /dogs, now I'm getting the loader data specifically from this loader because this loader will be tagged with /dogs. What that means is that now I could take this dogs component and put it anywhere as long as it's rendered within the scope of that route. So to me, this sort of solves that coupling problem. Technically, it's still coupled to the route, but I feel like it's done in such a way where it doesn't feel so limiting because you can just kind of move it around as you please. And so that's really nice. And then also just another quick that was nice. That was nice that Tanner did this for us. He has a select method on here. So if you've ever used like a select in like Redux or something like that, you can basically select to the specific changes that you actually care about in that component. So that way you're not re-rendering based off of everything. So just like another just that's sweet. This seems like this guy cares about developers. That's really nice. So anyways, I just wanted to show that loaders are not bad anymore. And then I want to talk about other cool stuff. Auto preloading, that's basically like, imagine I hover over a link, it automatically can preload the data for that. So that way when you click on it, loads faster. I think all the frameworks have it now, but it still has that. Middleware, if you haven't, I don't know that I'll get around to middleware today, but the middleware, the best way I could describe actually the whole server-side function experience in TanStack Start is that it feels a lot less like file-based routing, like function calling. And it feels a lot more like if you've ever used something like Hono or Alicia or one of these like sort of modern express replacements that does a good job handling type safety from like I guess like middleware to middleware, if that makes sense. Like in other words, in like Hono, you can do a validator function, and then that way you know that the body that you're pulling out in the next thing is type safe. So as a whole, I would say all the server stuff in TanStack is kind of built around that, except for API routes, and I think that might be in the pipeline. API routes are different from server functions. So API routes are basically exactly what you get in Next.js, to my knowledge. I don't know that there's a huge fundamental difference. You get a nice session hook to work with. You get context injection. The context injection is really cool because you can, anyways, I don't want to go too deep into it, but it's very cool. It's like one of those things that shocks you when it works, that the type carries over. Also, another big thing is these data loading patterns, whether or not you're in Next.js, whether or not you're in Remix, whether or not you're in TanStack Start, all of them have a weakness, which is that you just they're not fine-tuned, right? So like sometimes you're gonna have to dig in and you're gonna have to say, oh, only cancel this under this circumstance, do some data pulling, do an optimistic rendering type thing. And the beautiful part about TanStack is that it is built to work with React Query, which is like the data fetching library. So because the actual router is integrated with it, there's some really nice things that you can do. Also active class names. So yeah, so this is just another little nice DX thing. Anytime you have a link, they give you an active props that you can call on it. So that way, like, let's say you want to change, you want to make it like look a certain way, you just really easy to pass in. There are API routes. Nitro is pretty cool. So Nitro is you could think about it as a framework building framework. And Nitro basically has primitives, like the way that it's going to benefit you as a user. A lot of it is stuff that actually just serves TanStack Start under the hood, I believe. I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure that that's what it is. But the way that it can benefit you is that Nitro has all the pieces to make it easy to switch deployment platforms. So for example, let's say you want to go like change from deploying with Bun to Dino or something like that. It's like a string in a config file and not like a tutorial that you have to watch, which is really nice. Then also the idea for server components. So server components are not a part of TanStack Start yet, but Tanner Lindsley himself, I've watched many little things, and there's one with syntax where he was talking about basically the idea for server components is, this is going to be a TLDR explanation, but imagine you have something like React Query. Well, what does React Query do? React Query has a lot of high fine-grained control over when you load data into React. Well, what if that data, instead of being some JSON data, was just like the binary stream of a React component? So my understanding is that the future for server components in TanStack world, rather than it being coupled to the data fetching that you do inside of the framework, it's going to be, hey, let's use these data fetching libraries. I think it could either be the router or query, but I'm not sure. Maybe he's talking about that in the chat. I don't know. But the idea is now imagine you can control something like server components with React Query instead of with Next.js or something like that. Seems like a cool idea. And then the selectors for router state. So the not so cool stuff that I've encountered, we're also going to get to some code in a second. The not so cool stuff that I've encountered, it's still in beta, and it feels a little bit like it's still in beta. I will say, knowing that it's still in beta, I still enjoy working in it more than Remix right now because of all the other cool stuff that you get. But like you'll notice some things feel like whoops, that was Doomslayer, my dog. So server functions, I think the type serial I've encountered a few situations where the type serialization is off. Actually, I wonder if my buddy Alok is on here, but he actually pointed out one in Stack Overflow to me, and I think he actually fixed it. So he's technically another TanStack contributor. But anyways, also another thing is sometimes the errors are bad. Now, I will say, any of us that's used Next.js after App Router, any of us that's used Remix, where it's not like bad errors are not a thing in any of these frameworks because they're doing a whole bunch of magic under the hood. The particular one that got me was this one. So I guess Vinci, which is right now what TanStack is built off of, but I think it's actually going to be changing at some point. Exports like a Zod stub or something like that, and the error that you get is just a nightmare. So anyways, don't do that. But what I'm finding is that the more that I work with it, the more that those kinds of errors are things that I can kind of steer clear of if I kind of know what I'm doing. So let's build stuff. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm cheating a little bit today. I'm using cursor. The reason for that is I don't think y'all want to see me style a table for 20 minutes. So, I mean, cursor does a great job of it. I don't know what y'all's opinions on cursor are, but I have been loving it, to be honest. And I was super opposed to it for a while. But the ability to do little demos like this and it just goes smoothly has really and truly shocked me. Under guidance of that guy right there, Jeff, I was instructed that there was probably a good chance that under pressure I would fat finger some stuff and break things. So I figure before we go and build the thing, I'm going to show you what the target is just in case of worst case scenario. So let's go ahead and look at the little app here. So this is just a dashboard, and this dogs thing doesn't actually work. We could fill out this stuff later if we wanted to. But the general idea here is I can go in here and look for customers. Let's look for one named John because my name's John. And then it looks like this is the wrong spelling, but we're going to go for that one. And then you can go in, look at Jonathan's dogs, including this one, and that's definitely a dog. That is a Snoop dog. And yeah, this is what we're going to build today. Any questions so far? I've done a lot of talking. Okay, cool. Let's get started. The only thing that I have pre-done here is I think I have imported a Zod validator thing just to make sure that I don't mess that up. And I'll show you what that is. And then also I built a Prisma file, which we'll look at together. But this Prisma file is basically, excuse me, all that pizza and beer. Anyways, if you look at this, it's just a customer can have many dogs, and that's it. We're not getting super fancy with users or anything like that. And on top of this, for reasons that I think it makes the demo better, if we look at this, I'm just seeding 1,000 users because I want to show you how easy it is to build something that can handle, more than the 5 that you would seed manually. Got to hydrate. It's not actually hydrating. Anyways, let's go ahead and pull this up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by clearing everything out. And basically everything is happening the way that I set this demo up. Everything is happening in routes. So we're just going to go ahead and clear all the routes but root. And then just to show you I did properly break everything, I'm also going to get rid of this header. And now let's go ahead and just look at what we have here. And it says, hey, by the way, no routes are available because you deleted everything. You idiot is what it's telling me. So now we're starting from scratch properly. So let's go ahead and build a new route. Right now, I'm going to make a cheese route just to show you how this works. And I want you to pay attention to my hands right now. Do you see that? It built the route for me. That's super nice. I mean, I don't know who here has experience with CLI gen tools, but like if you've ever used like Rails or something like that, I like this better than that because I didn't even have to tell it what to do. It just knew I made a route in the route folder and it made the route. So I love that. I think it's great. Anyways, it's just one of those like little nifty, this feels nice things. Anyways, let's go ahead and make this cheese route. And I'm just going to make a cool route that says a bunch of fun things about cheese. And let's see what Cloud comes up with. I wonder how true any of these facts are. Really doesn't matter. But we're going to take them at surface value and pretend that they're real things. Anyways, I'm going to go here and I'm just going to go to /cheese and we will see. There you go. All about cheese, fun facts about cheese. This is actually pretty nice looking. If I were making a really stupid demo about cheese, I don't think I could do it this quickly in 30 minutes, to be honest. So, and just to read one of these, the world's most expensive cheese is made from moose milk and costs $500 per pound. None of us know if that's true, but I sure hope it is. Okay. Anyways, that's a cheese route. We can leave that cheese route in there. Anyways, I wanted to show you one of those routes first because I think it's clearer to tell what it is. The next route that I'm going to make is like the home route. So the index route is what we're going to call that. So in here, I'm just going to make index.tsx. And what you'll see here is basically this just stands for if I'm home, that's what I'm rendering is the home route. Any questions so far? Oh, damn it, Cloud, lying to us. AI is AI. What? No, this is this is called cursor. If you want to.
Cursor. So it's a cursor is a fork of VS Code, and arguably very faithfully maintained.
Yeah.
So, but it just has all of the AI stuff built in. $20 a month to have access to those models, and it's I have 70 test files that I wrote today. I didn't write any tests. But there's 70 of them. You just say, I want to test for this.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which is what it said, generate tests for this file. And it says that you do it. Try it mostly. AI is a mix of it, right?
Yeah.
You do have to be smart enough to understand what it's fitting out.
No, it's good. The way that I would describe it is, for me, my experience with it is that it's like I'll do AI stuff, and as long as I'm monitoring it, I actually feel like I'm writing better code because I'm double checking it. But like, it's not gonna make a bad coder good. But it could. I know a college PhD student that's like using it to like build a Vue app, and he knows nothing about Vue, and it actually looks like kind of decent. So it's like you still are gonna have to. Yeah, it's really good for ideas and stuff like that. Like, for example, just to show you, when I was making this Prisma file, like, I don't think I named any of these fields. I just had them do it. I mean, I could have, I just didn't because I didn't care enough. Yep. 100%. Yeah. And I obviously love it for demonstrations like this because y'all don't care about how do you make a table in React. You care about the data loading patterns for TanStack Router. Hopefully. I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully I can convince you. That is built into TanStack Router. So when I save the file, that's actually happening because of the npm dev process. Just to show you, if I turn that off and then I make a dogs endpoint, I don't get it. And then watch what happens when I turn it on. Boom. So that's really cool. Also, something that now that we're on that little tangent, something really important to point out here, the magic, all the magic that you're going to see today, the way that it's happening is because of that file generation. So if you look at route tree here, this is like the file that hooks all that up. And I think the main way that it works is it defines the parent-child relationship between the routes. I'm not going to poke through that because I'm sure I'll do a bad job of poking through it, but this is where the magic is. That's where the magic happens right there, just like MTV Cribs. All right. So I'm going to take another sip.
That I was watching Tanner give a demo in the hallway track with the replay guy, showing how he build that file once it was premiere and everything. Like, record go to conferences and do the hallway track.
No worries. Sweet. All right, let's build stuff. So you're going to see the reason why I really wanted to do a coding demo and not just talk about stuff is because there's so many like little magic things. And actually, I will say, even though it's like magic stuff, a lot of it actually feels less like abstract and more of just like, oh, it's magic because there's that generated file, and it's not like super like hard to conceptualize maybe what's going on. Even though I couldn't like code it, I feel like it's actually pretty intuitive. So let's go ahead and just get started. So I have this homepage. Let's go ahead and I'm going to go to the root. And who here knows how outlets work? I'm trying to gauge whether or not that's something, you know how outlets work? Outlets, OUTL. Okay, I'm gonna take the time to explain that then. Okay, so at the root, let's say I get rid of an outlet, and then on here I render an H1 that says hello. This is actually not unique to TanStack router. But what you'll see here is now, no matter what route I'm on, I'm always rendering hello. What you could think of this outlet as is that it's a slot where the child routes of whatever route you're on will render. Does that make sense? So in this case, because I have an outlet, maybe in here I'll make a header. So let's say I'll say like make a header that links to customers, cheese, and home. I shouldn't have said slash home, but that's okay. Okay, so now I have this header, and the way to think about it is whatever child route I render will render inside of that slot for where the outlet is. So let's look at this. We're going to navigate to the cheese route. So when I save this, this is the nav bar that Cloud made. And what you can see here is now if I go here, because I'm on the index route, that home route, right? It's rendering anything inside of index in there. If I navigate to the cheese route, remember the outlet is just right here. So it's just rendering that. Does that sort of make sense? It's really similar to like React Children or something like that. Cool. So this is just a fundamental thing you have to understand about not just TanStack, but also Remix does this. I want to say Next.js does this too. Maybe I'm crazy. Am I tripping? No, I'm tripping. No, Next.js does not do this. I have spoken lies. Okay, I was wrong. That's okay. I don't work in Next.js that often, if you can't tell. Sweet. So, anyways, we have now created these little like routing setup. Great. Let's go ahead and just make this homepage a little nicer since it takes 10 seconds. So maybe in here, I'm going to say, make a dashboard that links to customers and cheese as big buttons with descriptions. Boom. Come on, Cloud. Come on, Cloud. Is Cloud the right pronunciation or is it Claude? 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 Okay. So there we go. So now I can link the customer. That looks really good. Hey, good job. Anyways, so I'm gonna go ahead and just show you the links. Cool. Nothing fancy here. Nothing TanStacky here. Actually, there is one TanStacky thing. Does anybody notice anything wrong with my code? I mean, there's a giant red flash saying something to me. What's that saying? Customers is not assignable. We don't know what. We don't need to know the rest of the error message. We just know that there is an error there. Why do we think that's happening? Anyone want to take a guess? Route type, the route doesn't exist. It's literally because that file doesn't exist and it hasn't been added to the route tree yet. So now we're getting a form of type safety that you don't really get with other frameworks. So this is just like step one of this type safety. Okay. Just to show you. Okay. So if I go here and now I go ahead and I make a customers page, then let's see what happens. Customers.tsx. Boom. Now we have a customers page. Whoo, look at that. Did anyone see that go green or at least yellow? You know, yellow's happy enough for me, right? This is happy now. Now customers exist. Pretty nifty, right? I think it's nifty. Sweet. Anyways, let's go ahead and make a little customers page. I'm actually, one of the things I figured out about this demo, because I did this demo like 7 times just to make sure I really didn't screw it up. One of the things that I figured out is that if you start with the backend stuff, the AI does a much better job of figuring it out once it knows the type signatures of things. So that's exactly what we're going to do. In TanStack, the way for doing loaders is you write a little function in here. We're not going to write this function yet, though, because here's the thing. In TanStack Start, this is not a back. You cannot just call backend code in here because this runs on the back end and it runs on the front end. What? What? Wait, what? How's that work? Well, let's talk about it. What you have to do if you want code that only runs on the server, it's going to sound kind of stupidly obvious, but you have to create a server function. So let's do that. Const, we're going to say get customers equals create server function. Really unintuitively named, I know. I wish they would have chose a better name. I'm just kidding. That's a really great name. And then in here, if you remember, I was kind of saying everything kind of feels like a backend framework as far as like the way types carry through. Let me just show that a little bit. Here, I'm just actually, that'll be something that comes in later. We're not going to worry about that now. For now, what I'm going to do though, in here, I'm going to go ahead and I believe you have to tag async things as async because TanStack does some magic under the hood. If you don't await on it, it does some magic to let you sort of do like a deferred promise type situation. We're not going to probably talk about that today. But what I'm going to basically do is I'm going to say await, well, don't forget the return, await Prisma dot customer dot find many. And because we have 1,000 in there, we're going to make sure that we only take 10 of them. And I think that that's good for now. Now what this allows me to do is that in here, I can return await. You do need that await again. And we're going to await get customers. And in here, actually, I'm going to do this a little bit better because otherwise my brain's going to just get mad at me. I don't think there's a great reason to do this other than I'm just going to be mad at myself if I don't. And this await cannot go there or it won't work. The await goes there. Cool. So now we're getting these customers and let's go ahead and use those customers. So now using those is as simple as what I'm going to do here. I'm going to do it two different ways. But for now, I'm going to do it this way. We're going to say customers equals route.useLoaderData. Okay. And because it's starting off the route, I don't need to specify where it's coming from or where it's going to. We'll get to that in a bit. But now I have these customers. Who wants to guess if these customers are type safe? They are. Fun fact. Yay, look at that. We got type safe customers. It is an array of those. Cool. So now I'm going to go ahead and now that Cloud knows about it, I'm going to say make a page for listing all the customers. There should be a table with a search bar at the top, and the table should have rows where each row is a customer. This is probably a bad prompt, but I think it'll get it. We'll see. I just feel like it was maybe a little longer than it needed to be. Let's see what it does. And we're going to see what we have. What do we have? Huh, look at that. Pretty sweet. I see. I don't know if you're more impressed by the framework or the AI, but both are fun for me. So yeah, I'm very happy with this. Now, of course, this search bar doesn't do anything, but that was pretty fun, right? Any questions so far on how this is working, what it's doing, or anything like that?
Great. Say in the prompt.
As far as the cursor stuff, no, I mean it would be just like talking to ChatGPT, except for you're doing it right there. And I think it also does a lot of magic under the hood at like chunking up that request into smaller things, so that way it's like better contextually aware. I don't know the fine details of it, but like people have done comparisons, for example, of like Copilot with the same models compared to Cursor and the same models, and like the results differ wildly. And I think it's something about contextual awareness, not my niche. But yeah, so just a fun fact. Anyways, so we have this. What happens if I want to look up Jon in here? Well, I can't because it's not hooked up. So let's get that working. What do y'all think? I think it's a good idea. And I'm here, so I'm doing it. All right. Also, you'll notice we don't have dogs in here. I could fix this by doing an include dogs, but actually what we're going to do is we're just going to get rid of that. You'll see why, but that's fine. Cool. So now we have this. All right, let's go ahead and build this. Well, remember how I said sometimes the type safety in TanStack is a little bit freaky. Part of that is you can do it with search params. What? Search params? How does that work? Okay, let's find out. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go here. I'm going to call a function called validate search. And basically, the way to think about this function is you can technically do whatever you want in here as far as like validation. So I could do like an if type of search dot name equals string, but that sucks. Nobody likes doing that. So let's just use odd. Everybody know what odd is? Pretty good. Okay, so the general idea of what Zod is, you define a schema and then it poops out a shape. I'm not going to go super deep into it now, but just know that basically the cool part about something like Zod, there's other alternatives too. The cool part about it is that not only does it parse it and validate the shape, but it also asserts the type in the TypeScript compiler. So I know that once it passes the parse, that I know what shape, TypeScript knows what shape it is, not just me. Does that make sense? On top of that, also, it can do the same thing for setting up the inputs for the function, which you're probably not going to care about that now. That's probably too much if you've never heard of Zod before, but just know it's going to make this thing easier for me to work with and easier to follow the code. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and instead of actually making a function where I validate everything, what I'm going to do instead is I am going to basically say validate Zod, I think is the name of it, Zod validate, Zod validator. Zod validator is the name of the function. Gotta love TypeScript. Just like type something, maybe it works. Type it backwards, maybe it works. Anyways, in here, I can define a schema. And if you haven't seen Zod, this is Zod. So basically what I can say is the search params is going to be an object. This is going to be maybe an object. Maybe that object exists. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's undefined. That's what that optional means. It means exactly what it does in the TypeScript system. And then in here, we're going to say that the search term is going to be a string, and that string is also going to be optional. Okay, so now I have this shape for a schema, and also this will be good enough to start. Okay, so I want to go chunk by chunk. Now what we really want to do is I want to make it to where when I type in here, I see those search params at the top change. Okay, that's what I'm going to try to do. Okay, and the way that I'm going to achieve this is with a couple of things here. First one is I'm going to say that the search params equals use search. I'm going to do this, and you're going to see it's like, wait, I'm expecting an argument. Does anybody want to guess what that argument is? I want to see how intuitive the framework is. Maybe there's some intuition here. What? The route. Exactly. That's exactly what it is. It's the route that you're getting those search params from. Because if you think about it, I am only validating the search for the customer's route. So now I can go ahead and I can plug that in here. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say from customers. Well, guess what? Let's just poke around this type for a second. What is that? Look at the type signature on that. That's pretty cool, right? I think that's cool. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I think that's awesome. I think that's really awesome. And I think it's really awesome because I've ran into problems from not having this before. And it's just like, oh, refreshing. Nice. Just like Ranch Rider spirits. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry. I get a little over the top sometimes when I'm doing this kind of thing. Anyways, search params. So now what I can do is I can go ahead and I'm going to set the just like any controlled component that you've ever done. You do two things. You set the value to whatever the state is, and you set the state to whatever the value is. So that's exactly what I'm going to do here. I'm going to set the value to search params dot search term, and if that doesn't exist, we'll say empty string. And if I'm going to talk about how do I set the state now as a question? Well, if I'm going to set the state for something with location in the URL, what should I be changing? Maybe the location. What do we use to change location in a lot of these libraries? Use navigate is pretty common. In fact, a lot of the reason why this was super intuitive for me to poke around is because there's another like API that looks exactly the same in Remix called use navigate. And that's exactly what you use here. It's different the way that it functions, but it feels very similar. So now I'm going to say navigate equals use navigate. Pew. And now when I navigate to this thing, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, when you change this thing, I need that E. that e.target.value. Y'all know what's coming. Now I'm going to navigate. And this time I could specify two. Well, guess what? That's just going to be customers. And now I could say the search is going to be search term e.target.value. Who thinks that's cool? No hands. No one thinks that's cool. Someone's got to think that's cool. I thought it was so cool when I saw it. Anyways, I'm going to look at this. And now you can see as I change this, it very quickly updates those search params. So that's really cool. I love that. Also, because you're calling a navigate, you're also triggering like the loader potentially and other stuff. So just to show that now all we need to do, well, we need to modify a couple things. Remember when I said this feels a lot like an API? Like using like Hono or something like that. Well, let's go ahead and add a validator here. In here, I'm going to say Zod validator. We're going to go schema. I'm just going to copy this. I don't know that I love the idea of trying to be dry with this because technically, I don't know that you want to couple. Like as this were to grow, I don't know that you would necessarily want to couple the validator for your search terms with the validator for one specific function. So I'm actually going to duplicate it here. I think it's the right decision, even though it may look a little bit not dry. Then from here, all I got to do is pass in my, in here I need the data. And by the way, the only reason why it didn't scream at me is because, just to show you how type safe it is, of this optional. And in fact, we could leave that optional off and it would probably be a good decision. So that's what we're going to do. Now I have to get the search steps from here. So I don't know, Tanner would be a better person to ask for this, but I'm not exactly sure why you need to do this, but for some reason you have to pull out the dependency and return it. So that way you can access it in the loader. And now that I've done this, I can go ahead and pull out depths, pull out that search. Also, just notice if I get rid of this, that search doesn't exist. I don't know exactly why. I don't know the purpose of that, but I know that there's some type safe magic stuff going on there. And once you know that it's there, it's really easy to work with. I go here, and now I'm just going to say the data. The search term is going to be search.search term or empty string, something like that. Or I could just not return it because it's optional. And actually, that'll probably make it a little more logical on what we do next. We actually have to update the logic for the function now. So, well, now that I have this, I could pull out the data. Guess what? That data is type safe. Pretty cool. And now I'm just going to say, hey, if there's no search term, why don't we return this? Else, we are going to return prisma.customer.find many. I probably should add an order by in there, but who cares? We're YOLOing it today. 10, and we're gonna say where name. Let's do this a little bit more right. Prisma is really good for this kind of stuff. There's alternatives to Prisma that are also really good. So I'm not trying to say Prisma is the best or the only thing at this. It's just the one that I know best, which is why I chose it. There's also like Drizzle, which seems really cool. There's also other stuff out there. One of the ones that seemed really cool to me was EdgeDB, but that's the wrong tangent to go down now. We're going to say if the name contains the search term. And then here we're going to say if the email contains the search term. And for those of you who haven't used Prisma before, it's just a type safe querying client for SQL. So this is very much like saying, hey, select all customers, take 10 of them where either the name contains the search term or email contains the search term. So that should read exactly like it looks, does exactly what it looks like. And let's find out if it worked. It worked, I think. Look at that. We're going to see if we have any Jeffs. We got Jeffs. We're going to see if we have any, I don't know, what are some other names in here? I don't know. It doesn't really matter. There's 1,000 random seeded names in here. But anyways, maybe there's a Tanner in there. Oh, Tanner1 at Hotmail with the name Homer. That makes perfect sense. Anyways, Yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't work that hard on the seats file. I'm going to be honest. Um, anyways, I'm going to go ahead here and let's go to the next thing. So one of the things I'd really like to do that the demo that I started with had, and then we're going to sort of, from there, we're going to sort of, we'll leave the ball in y'all's court. Maybe we can explore some stuff, but I want to make it to where if I click on any of these names, I could pop open like a modal or something like that that shows that. And I'm actually going to make that a route-based modal. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead in here and I'm going to create a customers dot customer ID dot tsx. And voila, now we have a customer's ID route. And well, let's see. So let's go ahead and make each name, which we can see, y'all. Let's make this a link. Make this name a link. I bet it'll figure out the route too. Look at that. Customers, customer ID. That's fun. Good. And you'll see that this is not happy, and that's because there's a different way of doing this in here. So you actually say customers, customer ID. I think it actually will work if you do it the other way, but it's just for type safety reasons, it's better to do it this way. And then in here, you could say the params customer. Oh, it's because I haven't actually made an object inside of that object. Well, inside of that not object. I'm just going to shut up. Cool. And this is unhappy, I believe, because of the fact that number is not assignable to type string. We could actually fix this, I believe. What? ToString? Yeah, I could do that. Or I could show more cool stuff. So I could also go here and do validate, or I think there's a params. Uh, I'm gonna mess that up if I do it. I think there might be a way to validate the params, but we're just gonna do the ToString. We're gonna go the easy way for now, just because I don't want to make a mistake. But I feel like there is a way to validate that. I'm just not sure. Anyways, yeah, right. It makes sense. I don't know if there's any serialization going on under the hood there, though. Like there might be a way to like, so for example, Zod has a method called coerce where where it might track it across. I don't know. I don't know though. And I'd rather just we're gonna do happy path today. We're not gonna get experimental. At least not for me experimental, hopefully. Maybe we will after, but let's get the boilerplate cool stuff out of the way. Anyways, now that we have this route, let's go ahead and make a server function. I'm gonna cheat. Reason Cloud. I'm gonna say, or Claude, make a server function that I spelt function wrong, but it'll know. It'll know that grabs a customer by ID and their dogs. Use this is another cool thing for cursor. Use customers as a reference. And now it's contextually aware of that other file. So when I do this, it's probably going to do a pretty good job. And looks like it did. So now in my loader, I can go ahead and we're just going to go ahead and I can grab my params out of here. Guess what? These params are type safe. They're again type safe. In other words, I mean, it's type safe in the sense that it knows that there's a string called customer ID there. So now I can say, let's go ahead and return. Oh, and look, it even did the parse int for me, so that way I don't have to do that. Nice. We're gonna say return, sorry, get customer with dogs. Also, something I didn't call out, you don't have to put a $sign here. This is just a me thing. This is not a framework thing. So if for whatever reason you don't like $signs, you don't need $signs. I just like doing it because as a convention, it just tells me, hey, this thing's a server function and it makes it maybe a little easier to find, but it really doesn't matter what you call it. So just wanted to point that out. Guest customers with dogs, and we're going to say that the data is going to be that customer ID is params.customer ID. And now we're going to go ahead and here, we're going to say render the customer as a modal. Show all of their data and all of each dog's data. See if it does it. Oh, it's looking good. It's looking good. It's looking good. Let's go, Claude. Let's go. Okay, so it did some stuff that's like not real, but we can just delete that. By the way, this is one of the nice things about using something like AI with TypeScript, is that like, you've got, it's like you have a couple of pair programming buddies. You've got, your little validator TypeScript, you've got your little generator Claude, and then it's just a good little way of doing stuff. Anyways, one of the things that we're going to notice is when I link on one of these, I click on it, nothing's showing. Why isn't anything showing? Well, because I haven't made an outlet for it yet, so it's not rendering that child route. So I do need to render that outlet. So I'm going to go ahead and go to customers. And actually, if the modal is styled correctly, it shouldn't matter where that outlet is because it's like absolutely positioned, so it shouldn't matter. So let's just go ahead and on here, outlet, boom, 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 boom. And now let's try this. Boom. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Look at that. Pretty good. All right, what do we think about this demo so far? Also, I need to make those pictures show up because that is just essential. But while I'm doing that, because I'm not actually doing it, Cloud is. Any questions? Sweet. Okay.
And question from the student gallery wants to know what's creating all of the addendum in cursor at the end of your function at the end of the line. It points to what the is.
I'm not sure what you mean.
Go up.
Sure.
Do like a function. So you see all of the light gray text there. It says line.
Oh, that's one of my plugins that I don't remember what it's called. Not that one. I have too many plugins. Don't judge me. Don't judge me. Don't judge me.
Okay, we'll find out.
No, I'll find it. It won't take long. Yeah, it's called. I don't think it's going to take too long to find it. It's not that one. I don't know, but I got the idea from Vim and then saw if it existed and it did. So I used it and it actually works a little nicer than it did in Vim. Um, I'm gonna scroll for 10 more seconds, and if I don't find it, we're ditching it. This is slightly embarrassing, but I'm okay with it. What? There is a plugin that I have that gets this for you to where it like points out the things. Most of these are just stupid color themes that I never use. It's not that one. That one actually wound up being useful. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, we're ditching it. Sorry, y'all. But there's a plugin. Fortunately, I know Martin, so I can show him that afterwards. But yeah, there is a plugin. I'm sure if you look for it, you will find it. So just look hard enough, and you will find it. What? Ask Cloud. I wonder if I can. I wonder if Cloud's contextually aware. Maybe we'll do that after. But I could try it. Sweet. Oh, cool. I sold Martin on TanStack and Cloud. You're welcome, Tanner. I'm just kidding. Anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and I am going to pull up my slides once more. Slides. What I will say is calling them server components is not actually accurate, I don't think. In other words, these are not React server components, in the sense that React server components, what they do is they stream like HTML into a specific spot. This is not that. What it does is it builds like, and I'm probably butchering this explanation, but it builds the React tree on the back end, and then it rebuilds that React tree, and then it like, I think it like starts out with a dehydrated version of that React tree on the front end, and then it hydrates that version with JavaScript, which is fundamentally a little bit different than React Server Components, which streams it in. I think I am not the wizard on that stuff. But yeah, did you have a follow-up question to that? I don't know if there was. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's pretty crazy how much you get from those routes. Yeah, it's nuts. Um, Sweet. Uh, so I can stay here for a very long time. I don't know how long y'all want to stay, but what I figured might be really cool is I made this giant list of topics, and we can see where it takes us if y'all want to go into any one of them. There's a lot of stuff I didn't cover today because TanStack Router has a lot of features. I still haven't even discovered all of them, and I've been going pretty ham at it for a couple weeks now, and like also before that too. So
So obviously, it seems like the streaming benefit of Next.js.
Mhm.
You can just deploy it in one click over yourself.
Yeah,
Please, can you deploy it over yourself?
we're getting a Tanner response.
Uh,
Oh, okay.
yes. So, um,
My understanding is that Vercel has drank a little bit of the TanStack Kool-Aid. I don't know that they're like full in on it like they are on Next, but I think that they're making deployment capabilities for TanStack. So
there are React router for Linux called adapters, but it's the same idea. It's a config file, you say where you're loading from, and you go to Vercel, point to your GitHub repo, and you go to your next project, and it just Netlify. These are the two. I don't. Doesn't Netlify offer the same kind of links to the repo?
also on an optimistic note, we are part of the power there. Like, in other words, theoretically, if we like the framework enough, we use it enough, they're going to support it because they want more customers. So, I mean, just, on a hyper optimistic, charismatic note, which is what you're going to get from me most of the time. That's one way of looking at it. Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, I haven't actually deployed a TanStack router application yet. No, I haven't yet. Just to be 100% honest, I can't imagine it's that bad, honestly. I don't know. If you want, I could follow up with you after doing it. But I haven't done it yet, so I'm not going to speak personally on it. Yeah.
Through all of the neighbor.
Yeah.
Can you get like even how to just to straight off that's free.
Yeah. I would also argue that one of the benefits is that you do that one-click deployment on Vercel, you're doing something that saves you, tops like an hour or two on a project that you're going to be spending a long time on. And on top of that, you're locking yourself. It's really hard to deploy Next to anywhere but Vercel, is my understanding. Like, they have built solutions around it, but it's a whole thing that you have to do.
It's not one. I do have Next running EKS on AWS.
Okay.
It's lots of too many acronyms in Amazon, if you ever noticed. But it's basically a option file.
Gotcha.
React Denver's website. Y'all already clicked on it because that's how you're here. That's in Next, posted on Netlify.
Nice.
And that's what.
But was it easy to do?
Yes.
Really? Interesting. Nice.
I do not have all of the same buttons that Vercel does. So
Gotcha.
Image optimization and
Gotcha. Yeah.
It's Netlify. The other reason I'm still using Netlify is because we're on a open source plan.
Gotcha.
It's a community project, therefore I pay for that hosting. I pay for the domain.
Is it accurate to say that a lot of the cool Next.js like features don't work nearly as well outside of Vercel unless you know what you're doing?
There is stuff like caching, partial pay re-rendering,
Image caching and stuff like that.
streaming, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So Vercel does not sell Next. Next is open source. It's free. They sell services. They sell runtimes. There's a lot of big. So I'm not gonna say anything bad about it because
No, it makes sense.
So some of the stuff, no, it's not easy. There is a organization called Open Next.
I saw a video on that.
That is trying to bring all of those features back in parity so you can roll with your own. And the next Vercel next devs openly support Open Next. So it's like they're helping get to a point because that is the biggest complaint is you can't run Next outside of Vercel. You can. it's not a one click.
Mhm.
So it's not nearly as easy. You have to read some docs and whatnot.
Okay, so I didn't really talk to people about it. Pretty probably is a fine. But it's really good.
Yeah, no, Vercel is a very nice deployment platform.
It really is, and their pricing options are actually really good. The last company I was with, we ran off Vercel. I was running 4 production instances that were based off main, and then I had PR instances that lived forever. So like it built a deployed version of your PR, and you could go back to that 6 years from now when it's really deployed. All of it's great. Like we paid for a credit card. I think
We saw that. It's definitely not on a recording forever.
And doing the math, like we were gonna have to have minimum for us was 50 customer active data users to even break the cent figure. So it's like it's I look at economies of scale is a perfect place to be, because the day you go, you know what, our spend here is getting to be flat out. You've broken out, like you are a success. You now can afford to hire DevOps engineers and infrastructure engineers to solve task solutions for you. That's
Fair take.
$200 a month on Vercel is like way more than you and I.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Oh, sweet. No, it's all good. Look, I think it's good getting some differing opinions here on stuff. So I respect it. Cool beans. So I have all this stuff to talk about. Is there anything here? Oh, yeah. Don't worry about that. What do we want to talk about? There's tons of stuff we could do. I could show other cool stuff for TanStack Router. I mean, that's the idea. I could talk about maybe some pain points I had in Remix. I could talk about all sorts of stuff.
well, but for QA, you want to have some networking time.
That's fine too.
Anyone on Zoom have questions, comments, concerns, criticisms?
Yeah, roast me. Let's go, Martin. Just kidding. Cool mustache. That's a good roast. I'll take it. I would say cool mustache to you, but I don't know if you have a mustache right now. But if you did have a mustache, I bet it would be cool. Oh man, it's a shame.
So, thank you very much, Jon, for hanging out and showing us this. The realm of type safety is probably the biggest kicker, and it's
Yeah.
the fact that it knows if a route exists because it's a medium,
Yeah.
not because you had to type a specific interface.
Can I show a couple more, like just wild type safety stuff? Here's a cool one. At your root level, this is typically a way you would do auth. At a root level, you could define like there's a function you could define called before load. And on here, let's say I just return anything. I'm going to return name is John. Okay. You could sort of think about this as like, what? Good call. Good call. Good call. At least I said return, so you knew that I was wrong. That's good. Who makes mistakes like that? Anyways, so I'm returning this. Well, guess what? Now in every single child route of this component, so this doesn't just work for root. This works for any component and their children, which means that, like, let's say I have an authenticated dashboard route. I could make it so all children of dashboard have this. But for now, I'm just going to do it all the way in the root. I'm just going to go to my cheese route real quick, and I'm going to go to the loader. And in here, I'm going to access the context. What do we see? Name. I pass that in from the parent. So it's like this really nice dependency injection thing. And also, once you get like, let's say you're using React Query or something like that, that's exactly what you do, but with the React Query client. And they even have a special, that's one of the big things that I think is a really big selling point that maybe I didn't touch, is the fact that there's a very clear upgrade path to the thing that you need when the happy path doesn't work. I think in general, this is one of my biggest, like, why this framework seems really good to me is that when I'm in Next.js and I escape Next.js, I'm not in Next.js anymore. And all that work that I did in Next.js, server components and all that stuff, it's kind of like I just got to rewrite it. Whereas in here, React Query integrates with the router. So that way you get certain things that you probably don't even know you're getting just because of that. And the long story short is like the way that it looks is you could basically in your loader say, hey, I want to ensure you would do something like this just to get an idea for what that would look like. In your loader, you could basically do something like, hey, you get this context. And again, because of dependency injection and all that, you can now say context.query client.ensure data loaded. And then in here, you like just dump in like the React Query thing. So that way you can make sure that that React Query thing is loaded by the time the page does. And there's like just little stuff like that baked all over the framework. It's actually really shocking. All the different places where you get stuff like that. The middleware is really cool too. So another thing I just didn't show that would just be a real quick, I'm not even going to do like a full on demo, but like if I go here to like one of my functions, guess what? When I'm doing an authenticated function, middleware, get user middleware. This is what my actual functions look like when I was converting things over. Oh, cool. I need to authenticate this thing. Boom, middleware. That was something that the Remix community was asking forever, and I don't even know if they have it yet. Do you know if they have it yet? They still don't have it yet. We've been asking for it for years, and I've only been in the game 2 years. We've been asking for it for years. They still don't have it. Right. It's been coming soon for 2.5 years. Exactly. So like there's just, it's like, as I'm using the framework, it's littered with all of these stupid things that I've always wanted that I'm like, wow, finally. Like it's just really refreshing to use. I don't know. There's just little stuff like that all over the place. And what's cool is it's like very discoverable too. It's not just like something that you have to sit down and like parse through docs to figure out, because if your editor is just showing you random shit, you're like, I wonder what that does. So that's one of the things I really like about it. I said I wasn't going to curse. I cursed once. Sorry, everybody. $1 in the swear jar. Oh, right in time. Howdy, howdy. Sweet. Well, if Tanner's back, is there anything you want me to go over from here? Also, does anybody like maybe want to see if you could sneak a question at Tanner? I got some in before we started here. Okay. All right. No worries. I am perfectly happy with calling it here also. So, um,
So,
sweet.
take this time. Chat, there's a little bit of pizza left. I'm sure Eric's mom gets horribly upset if I don't get to send him home with pizza for the. No, I won't.
And also just really quickly, I want to thank everyone for coming out. I really appreciate it. Especially Tanner's like, oh my God, that's crazy to me.
I sent pizza home everyone.
That's awesome. Sweet. All righty. Thank you all so much. Should I sign off of here?
Yeah, that's great.
All righty.
I'm still recording here. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Karen.
Toodaloo. Thank you all so much.